Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
So I went to go get cigarettes last night, about 3 in the morning, and I pulled into 7-Eleven, and I saw the lights were off inside, and I saw the person laying there on fire, and there was like blood around them.
Today's case will be traveling back to Halloween of 2015 when an 18-year-old who worked at 7-Eleven was brutally murdered. Kyle was a well-rounded person fresh out of high school. He had a fantastic relationship with everyone around him. Kyle and his sister would always spend time with each other, playing video games and going out to the movies. Kyle and his mother had a tight bond since he was a baby, but as he grew old, his parents separated, and Kyle would live with his dad and visit his mother and sister during the weekends. His mother and sister lived in Placid, Florida, and his dad lived 50 miles away in Punta Gorda. When he would stay at his dad's house, he had a nighttime job at his local 7-Eleven. Kyle was a timid person, so the night shift was significant for him. He loved the fact he didn't have to deal with many customers. On October 31st, Kyle was scheduled to work that night. Nothing was different to Kyle besides being Halloween. 5 hours after Kyle started working, dispatch got a call from someone claiming the 7-Eleven was on fire and someone was on the floor burning, so they needed help.
911, where's your emergency?
A kid saw 7-Eleven.
What's the address there?
I don't know the address, but someone is on fire laying inside.
Excuse me?
Someone is on fire laying inside.
Do you know the address?
It's 1121 Akiasa.
Someone's on fire?
Yes, someone is laying on the floor inside on fire.
The 7-Eleven was in flames, and after putting the fire out, they saw a body on the floor. As the caller had stated, after the room cleared out from all the smoke, they could see the body had blood on the face, a pool of blood around them, and the body also had burn marks everywhere. The firefighters described the scene as a horrific sight, something you usually don't see in a small town and something that will stick with you forever. When the detectives arrived on the scene, they walked into the 7-Eleven, and as they entered the store, they encountered the victim's body. They also found 2 shell casings on the floor, so the detective took a closer look and saw 2 gunshot wounds to the head. After securing the scene, another worker scheduled to come in later in the morning arrived. Officers asked the employee if they had any idea who the victim was, and she stated his name was Kyle. Why someone would randomly shoot Kyle, a 7-Eleven worker, and set the place on fire had detective confused. The money was still there and it didn't look like a robbery had taken place. Since it was a 7-Eleven store, there were surveillance cameras everywhere, so detectives had to review the footage to see if it would help the investigation. When looking over the footage around 3 a.m., Kyle was working in the back behind the register. You see Kyle walk from behind the counter and head over to the front door like he heard or he was looking for someone. When getting to the front and seeing no one, he then turned around heading back behind the counter. As he walked past the last aisle, a masked person jumped out of nowhere and put a gun to Kyle's face. And in a blink of an eye, with no hesitation, he pulled the trigger and shot Kyle in the head. The suspected shot Kyle again, and after that he began to pour gas all over his body and onto the counter, and after snatching a lighter off the countertop, he flicked the lighter and started a fire in the 7-Eleven. It was 7 a.m. when Kyle's family got the tragic news about his murder and that he would no longer be with them. It broke his family. They didn't understand who would do something like this to Kyle. He didn't have any enemies. Kyle was a shy person who wouldn't hurt anyone. Detectives wanted to speak with the caller. They thought the caller might have had something to do with what took place that night. They thought it was suspicious to make that call and just leave and not wait for the cops or to come back to give a statement of what they saw. So the detectives went on the hunt for the caller, and after finding her and bringing her to headquarters, detectives had a few questions.
So I went to go get cigarettes last night, about 3 in the morning, and I pulled into 7-Eleven, and I saw the lights were off inside, and I saw the person laying there on fire, and there was like blood around them.
Police also got her boyfriend that was with her that night, and when asking him the same question, he gave the same answer she did. He said they drove up, saw the building on fire and what looked like a body, and didn't want to stay in the area due to not knowing if the killer was still around and maybe would harm them, so he told his girlfriend to drive away.
At the store at the time, because I didn't know if he was still there, because it looked like the fire had
officer couldn't help but see that Alex had a lot of tattoos on his hand, and they remembered when looking at the footage, the killer had gloves on, but when he went to light the fire, he took the gloves off, and they were able to see his hand and saw the killer had no hand tattoos, so they could eliminate Alex and his girlfriend from being suspects. After clearing them, officers started talking to employees from the 7-Eleven and asked if Kyle had any enemies and if anyone would want to harm Kyle. Like, did they have any problems with any recent customers? And one of the managers stated that a few weeks back, they did run into a few issues with a gentleman and 911 had to get involved. Officers wanted to hear more about this problem to see if it played a role in Kyle's death. When asking the manager about the gentleman having issues, she told them that back at the beginning of September, she and Kyle were working and a guy came into the store to buy some beer. She was okay with that, she had no problem, but things got out of hand when she asked him if he can take the ID out of his wallet, and he told her no, he didn't want to. So since she couldn't check if the ID were real, she refused to sell him the beer, and that led to name calling and him throwing a show.
Yeah, it's the same as Dixon. Will do. Okay. Get away from me. Yeah.
She told Kyle to call the cops, and after that the guy left. She then told officers he then tried again on the 15th of September, to which the same manager saw him trying to repurchase beer. And since they had a problem last time, she refused to sell him the beer again. But another employee that didn't know about the situation sold him the beer.
I'm telling you, that's happening. No,
As she was standing in the street, he almost hit her with his car, so she then called the police again. They found out the name of the owner to the car, and his name was Michael Russo. Michael was an unstable guy. He didn't live far from the 7-Eleven, and he loved to get drunk most of his time. That wasn't enough to go looking for him as Kyle's killer, but what the detective did do was release the footage of the suspect, and a few days after releasing the video to the public, the police got a call from a man who claimed that his neighbor had the same limp and mannerism. Furthermore, the caller also mentioned that his neighbor owned the same camo trousers the perpetrator was wearing in the video. And you wouldn't believe it, the person he was describing in the video was his neighbor Michael Russo, the same person who was causing issue at the 7-Eleven over beer. Considering the lead to be valuable, the police followed up on it and were led straight to Michael Russo. Although Michael denied being involved in the arson or murder, authorities got a search warrant for his house, and when they entered his house, officers saw guns everywhere. His house was a mess as well, so searching it wasn't the easiest. They found a lot of ammo, but none that matched the gun used the night of the crime. Officers found a handgun on his dresser in the bedroom, and a few feet away, they found an AR-15 with a full clip. They also found a box of unused gloves that matched the same color as the ones in the video. When they checked the garage, they couldn't help but think they had just found the killer. In plain sight, there were several gas cans. All the gas cans were the same size as the one used that night. Detectives felt like they had the right guy. They also checked his car, and his car smelled like bleach and tons of cleaning products. Detectives found a blood stain in the car as well. They took everything in for evidence, and the blood stain went for DNA testing to see if it matched Kyle's blood. When the result came back from the blood stain, it was determined that the blood was animal blood, and it didn't match Kyle's DNA. The detectives were stuck after that. Not knowing what to do, they looked over the evidence gathered from Michael's house, and when looking at the picture of the gas can, they discovered something that could break the case wide open. The detectives saw 3 paint spots on the gas can, so they rewatched the footage from the night of the murder, and they went frame by frame, and what do you know? When looking over the footage, you can see the same 3 paint spots on the gas can that the killer was using. So the fact that Michael had the same gas cans that the killer was using was crazy. That was enough for them to arrest Michael for Kyle's death. With all the evidence they gathered, detectives were able to reconstruct what they thought happened that night. Detectives said Michael was mad since the last encounter with the manager, and the cops came and told him not to return back to the store for 1 year, and if he would come back sooner they would arrest him. Michael wasn't happy hearing about him being banned from his local 7-Eleven, so from that day forward, Michael wanted to cause some type of revenge on the 7-Eleven and the employees that worked there. He didn't care who was working, he just wanted to send a message of revenge. The detective stated Michael walked into the 7-Eleven, and when he opened the door, it made a bing sound that caused Michael to come out from around back where he thought there was a customer in the store. But when he came out and saw no one, it took him by surprise because he did hear the chime from the door being opened or closed. That's why in the footage, you see Kyle walk around the counter and walk to the front door. He was looking to see if he could help whoever was in the store, but when he saw no one, he turned to walk back. But Michael was watching him the whole time, so as soon as he got close, Michael jumped out and caught Kyle off guard, and with no time to react, he just shot Kyle in the head twice and poured gasoline over his body and the floor and the counter, hoping to set the building into a blaze and causing hell. What he didn't take into account was the sprinkler system turning on and reducing the fire till the firefighters arrived and stopped it. When everything was said and done, Michael was found guilty for second-degree murder and given a life sentence, and for the arson, he was given an additional 30 years.